Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is Anthony.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have a guest tonight, and we're going to get into some stuff with them. Before we do, though, let me explain some things to you. Just reminder, okay, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. That's the coordinates to get in touch with me, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. Send me your stories. Another thing I wanted to say is we have a Patreon, okay? And I have to say this because people, you know, they want to support the show and they want to help. We give back. You'll get a swag bag is what we call it. And it's a $10 tier and it takes 2 months, $20 tier, 30, 40, 50, and it goes up from there. And the $20 tier is instantaneous along all the way up to 50. And if you are a monthly Patreon, you will get different tiers of swag bags. Like, what do we got? Shirts?
Yeah, we got shirts, hats,
hoodies.
stickers.
Now that it's going to get cooler again.
Yeah, hoodies, and of course the books are all autographed as well.
Yeah, and it could be if you get the $40 tier, you get one of my books. $50 tiers, I give you both of my books, and I give you a book from one of many authors, and that's on every tier. You get an autographed book from one of the authors like Ken Gerhardt, Barton Nunley, Nick Redfern, David Weatherly, Lyle Blackburn, Chad Lewis. There's several others, and so those are all autographed books, and you will get swag. That's what we give you. And so to help out with the show, and then we give you some merch, and we appreciate the support. And don't forget, we have Friday's live stream, which has a guest every Friday, and that's a YouTube exclusive. You can't get that on Spotify or any other channels you're on if you're listening to us on a different platform, which I know a lot of you do. Sunday, same thing. But we just retell people's stories. Tuesdays are reserved for retelling stories, and then Thursdays now we're going to have guests on, and that's on the podcast and YouTube. Okay, so everything's on YouTube, but not everything is on the other channels. So there's like 15 platforms. This is our main platform, YouTube, and then Spotify is our podcast platform, one of them. And so you can watch us on either one. But there are many other people that watch us and listen to us on many other platforms. We just prefer these platforms. That's
yeah.
Now, that being said, if you want to find me, I'm Josh Turner 940 on Instagram. And I'm also on Facebook. Do me a favor and let me know that you're a listener of the show so I can approve your friend request, because otherwise, not going to do it. I get friend requests from people, and it's just because we have a lot of mutuals, and they just sit in my friends list, and we never interact or do anything. So I'm not a person that's going to approve somebody who just has a bunch of mutuals. I want to be able to interact with my fans, and I can't because Facebook has a limit. I think I'm at about 3,000 people right now, and I try to interact with as many people as possible. That's why I don't have the full 5,000, and I'm saving room for people who want to be friends who are listeners of the show. If you don't know me in my everyday physical life, then in cyberspace, that's fine. But just make sure that you let me know you listen to the show so we can approve you. That being said, I think that's it. We got to get started here. So I want to introduce my guest. His name is Eric. Eric, you want to say hi?
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Eric, and I've talked about you on the live stream, and I got people kind of excited about it because I think that you've done some work that I think people need to hear about. You've done a lot of investigating, and what I'm excited about, and the most important thing to me, is the area where you've been doing your work, and it's right here in our own backyard.
Right.
Yeah, and so
I don't think people are familiar with how strange and weird things can get here in Central Texas.
No, there's different theories. It's like, oh, it's the limestone. It was part of an inland sea, whatever. I don't know. There's all these different theories. But it is a very haunted place full of stories of ghosts, witches, vampires, Dogman, Bigfoot, you name it. There's all kind of chupacabra. I've been getting some chupacabra stories lately from ranchers around here, and I just did it again. We were in LaGrange, in LaGrange, and we went out there. My friend has a dealership there, and some of the locals were just telling us stories left and right. We went to this place called JD's Grill, really good food, by the way. If you ever go to LaGrange, check out JD's Grill. My friend has a Ford dealership there. It's called Alpha One Motors, and he's a really good guy. His name's Nick, and we went and we ate dinner, and it's just. It was really cool to talk to someone. And there was one place they called it Beefhead Ditch or something like that.
Yeah.
Where people claim to see this chupacabra. We talked to a rancher whose house was haunted, and just a lot of cool stories, man. And I gave a couple people my card, and they've reached out to me. Everywhere we go in Central Texas, it just seems to happen. And now you and I were talking at length about it. You did a documentary. Do you want to get started? Let's get started with that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of unintentional. I was just really investigating some weird stuff that was going on in my area. And that led to me making a full documentary, and it's available on Amazon and Tubi. And, some people were expecting more of like a Bigfoot narrative or, Bigfoot story. And there is some of that in there. But it really just touches on all the weird stuff that kind of accompanies the area, which is, it's like I said, not a lot of people, even the locals, don't really know about it, which is kind of strange. And it makes you wonder, is that by design? It's odd. But, and like you said, there's so much limestone here. We're actually part of the, as you know, the Edwards Plateau. Mm-hmm. And more specifically, we're part of the Balcones Escarpment, which is a fault line that stretches right above San Antonio all the way up to Dallas. In fact, it's actually visible from space. And that's full of limestone caves, creeks, canyons, and a lot of green belts just run throughout the Central Texas area. And the ancient people have actually made this area home for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. And one of the oldest skeletons, actually, it's 13,000 years old, was found right off of the Brushy Creek, where I focus most of my work on, in Leander. And it was found in the 1960s, I believe, and it was coined the Leanderthal woman. And like I said, it's about 13,000 years old, and that's back when they were doing the dating in the 70s. Now, technology's advanced a lot since then, so you might want to put a buffer or an error range there, so it could be as old as 16 to 19,000 years old, which kind of shows you that people have been here for a really, really long time. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe, and you wouldn't really expect that, just because we do have some urban areas here, but they're surrounded all by green belts and creeks on all sides. At least here, where I am in Williamson County, I mean, we're filled with caves and creeks all over the place. And I'm sure you've probably seen that where you are as well.
Yeah. I'm actually off of 620, but I used to live at the Domain, and I lived in South Austin for years. And I actually lived in a house that was haunted. And I had a friend who, he always told me that I was psychic. He said that I had these abilities or whatever, but I think anybody really can be. And I've said that on my live stream before, that there are people who are psychic, but I think everybody kind of is. It's just on how well you use it, like your ability. And I think it's God given. But he was psychic, like really honed. And he was like, dude, there's just so much limestone, and it adds to, and he claimed that there was like a vortex there, and it was centered around a mirror. And I've had multiple people come on the show, and we talked about it. But down there in South Austin, yeah, everywhere you go, there's like holes in the ground. It's like all over the place, man. I mean, and there's like right there where we were living, around that area, while we were living there and after we moved from there, we got stories of like humanoid type creatures, walking around in the woods in that area and way off William Cannon. And they have since built it up. But at one time, it was like all overgrown. And my friends would tell me, that they would get reports and see things. And a bunch of people saw a lot of different weird things in that area. So it didn't surprise me that the house that we were living in had a lot of activity. But there were our neighbors down the street, their house had a lot of activity too. And I didn't think that was a coincidence. I knew there was something to it. I mean, there had to be.
Well, yeah, I don't think people understand the amount of Native American burial grounds and mounds there are here in Central Texas. I mean, on the documentary, there's a point where I'm filming right off of the Harryman Road, and we'll get to the Harryman Road, I'm sure. But I was filming and coming up to construction workers and asking them about, if they'd seen anything weird or whatever. And a couple of the foremen walked right up to me, and they said that the whole area of Williamson County was a gigantic Native American burial ground. I have them on camera saying that. It's in the documentary. And it really dates back to some of the some of the older dates when they were building I-35. I know I believe it was in the 1970s. They actually found a Roman coin at the bottom of one of these ancient Native American Indian mounds, which you're kind of thinking like a Roman coin, in Central Texas, right off of the Brushy Creek, but which is just like I said, it's just kind of a really weird area. But they took the coin to the professor at the University of Texas, and he looked at it. And there were two professors that were working there at the time in that department. One of them believed it was real because he knew the person that had found it. He actually grew up relic hunting with that person in North Georgetown here. And the other guy was like from Philadelphia or New York, and he had just come to UT as a professor, and he didn't think it was real. And he came up with this weird conclusion that he said it was either a rodent that took it and burrowed with it, and that's how it got to the bottom of an Indian burial mound, or it was possibly roots from a tree. Now, that's for me, that's a little much. I think it's more plausible the other kind of theory that we're all thinking, right?
Well, you know what though? What happens though, Eric and Anthony, we've talked about this. That these people that they'll do mental gymnastics, as you always say, Anthony.
Oh yeah, like they'll try to come up with these ideas to debunk a certain idea, but their very explanation to debunk the original idea is more crazy than what they're trying to debunk.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it gets so far out there, you know.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Roman coin wasn't the only thing that was found there. There was a huge amount of artifacts that were stone artifacts that were found there. So it must have been a busy rodent, taking all that stuff down there, I guess.
And then of course, anything that happens in this area, there's always going to be somebody that's going to say, well, there's an explanation for that. I had one that tried to tell me, and this was near the Brushy Creek area, which was where you were. And since me and you talked the other day, I went through and I started digging out some reports and trying to find some. I found some interesting thing. We talked about orbs. Now, there was a woman that claimed she saw a blue ball of light, which someone told her, and this was a meteorologist. She asked somebody who was a friend, and he said it was ball lightning. And she was like, yeah, well, it came out of the water. And it's like, oh, well, it went into the water because they can do that. So it's like, and then supposedly it can chase you if you have static electricity on you, then the ball lightning will chase you around. So then she was like, nope, it happened in June 1997. She's like, and I was in that area. And we were walking through. It was like the green belt. There was a trail there. It wasn't like it is now. And and the roads weren't like, there wasn't this huge bunch of traffic up there. And she's like, there wasn't a lot of apartments and there wasn't a bunch of stores and stuff. And she says, and we were walking down by the creek and it was broad daylight and this blue ball of light that did not look anything like electricity came up out of the water and just kind of bobbed around and then kind of followed them. And then they got kind of spooked and they ran into the woods and went on the other side of the embankment. And it disappeared. It went back into the water. So when I read that report, her name was Jocelyn, but she was saying that it was so like weird. Like, how do you explain that? And I was like, you can't. I mean, yeah, a meteorologist told her that it was ball lightning at a dinner party, and I said, I don't believe that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're just, like you said, they were just kind of coming up with the best thing they could at that moment, I'm sure. But it's funny you brought up the orb, because in my documentary, it was really unintentional. I was out filming on the Harryman Road, getting some of the caves that were in the area. And I mean, there's just a bunch of caves all throughout that area. So as I was filming, an older couple came up to me, and they asked me what I was doing, and I explained to them what I was doing. They thought it was interesting. And then the husband tells the wife, show him that picture of that green thing you got on camera. And I was like, what the heck? So they showed it to me, and it is like some type of green thing. And some people might say it's lens flare, but it has something behind it or in it. It's not a solid green. It's like a green and black type looking thing. It looks really weird. I don't know what it is, but they sent it to me, and it was right there off of Harryman Road, where it's just, paranormal central caves everywhere in that area. You got to watch where you're walking because there's sinkholes. In 2018, there was a sinkhole that kind of messed up actually, I think it was 3 or 4 people's houses, foundations. And yeah, it's a real thing out here. You got to watch where you're stepping. You got to watch out for the snakes, for the sinkholes, and God knows what else out here.
When you and I were talking, we talked at length about several different subjects, but one of the things that you were talking about, which was very interesting, I had and it just came out on Tuesday, I believe, and it was some stuff that I had talked about before, like having seen something weird, which was a guy running across the highway.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I've talked about that on my show. It was just one of the weirdest things. You're just driving along at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and somebody runs, But we dropped the episode on Tuesday, and it was a guy claiming he was homeless at that time, and he was prowling around, and he claimed to have been attacked by these werewolf, dog-headed, wolf-headed, whatever type creatures. And you and I had talked about this, and you said you had done a lot of research off that area, Highway 29.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, which runs from Georgetown to Leander. Did you want to talk about that, what you found out there?
Yeah, so, I mean, in 2017, kind of part of the documentary also, there was a rash of sightings. A huge, people were seeing it. They were posting in social media groups about seeing things. You can actually go on the BFRO and you'll see a couple of encounters that took place in 2017. And one of them takes place there along 29. And I got the information from the man and everything. He was driving down there with his son on 29. He said it was about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And as he was driving, he saw this thing cross the road, jump into a tree, and just start shaking the tree, violently, really violently. And the man swears he had, it looked like a, hairy being, a hairy beast is what he described it as. And he thinks that one of the reasons why he might have kind of stirred that up was he had I think it's called a deer whistle on his car as he was driving. And he has that just to, I guess, try to avoid hitting a deer or something like that. And he thinks that might have been one of the main culprits as to why this thing was agitated and ran across the road. And that's one of the stories I've heard on 29. But 29 is just kind of loaded with Bear Creek, and then there's the Brushy Creek that's not far from there, and a lot of different stories. You're headed towards the Balcones Canyonlands if you're on that road, which the Balcones Canyonlands is just a gigantic national preserve in the hill country area right next to Marble Falls, and that's the same area where I'm sure you've probably heard about it, Josh, was the famous 1901 Bear Man account that took place. That's right there in the Balcones Canyonlands. Like if you're taking 1431 or 29, you will eventually end up right there. So yeah, it's just an odd, really strange area, and like I said, in 2017 there were a lot of sightings, so much so that we might have to touch on that here a little bit later about the bounty that was placed and all this other stuff. Oh
yeah, we definitely got to touch on that. Before you get into that, though, I wanted to stick on that spot for a minute.
Sure.
We used to have an account there. It was at the end of that highway. And what was the name of that? Well, we probably can't say the name of it, but it was a construction company.
It was a
Subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Subdivision, and the guards that would work out there would sometimes hear loud clashes between what sounded like coyotes and something else. And Anthony, you were out there on multiple occasions.
I remember hearing there was cattle out there, right? And then what? No, actually, I'm thinking of Rolane. Never mind.
No, Rolane is where Nellie, my wife, saw a Bigfoot creature.
Okay.
We're talking about in Georgetown, right outside of Georgetown.
If you're talking about, you brought up a coyote real quick. They're off of 29. I believe it was between 29 and I'm not exactly sure where I want to say maybe Ronald Reagan or something up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, a buddy of mine who's actually a very thorough investigative researcher who investigates, all types of things, but primarily Bigfoot, found a coyote that was pulled inside out and tied into a knot.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that picture. It was, I have it featured in my other documentary, The Legend of Harryman Road. But not only that, but he's found all types of things that he's shown me. But he's found that. He showed me it's closer to the Harryman Road, but he showed me a fence post, a steel fence post that had been bent like a banana. And he tracked a set of pretty big tracks there. And for whatever reason, on the other side, there was nothing there. But it's just, it's just really strange. I'm not sure what would be able to bend that post that way, without seeing any type of damage to the top of it or anything like that. Really hard to do that if you're a person, unless I don't know how much you lifting now, Josh.
I'm up there. I'm pretty strong, but I can't bend a metal fence post. I can tell you that. One of the things in that area it's not off of 29, but it's called Werewolf Church. That's the nickname that we gave it because of a friend of ours who used to work with us gave us a story, and Anthony was there along with Scorpion, one of my friends, when he told us that story. And his girlfriend kind of talked him into telling it. He didn't really like talking about it, but it was very interesting. And I told that story on another podcast years ago, but that moniker stuck. And so my wife came to visit. We went out there and we drove all up and down that area. And we ended up like something happened. Like we were there and we heard a bunch of noise and it scared my wife. So she was having like an anxiety attack. So we took off, but I took diuretics because of my weight at the time. And so I had to stop and use the bathroom. Yeah. And I said, look, man, I gotta, and she's like, how far are we from that? I was like, we're a mile and a half or so, which we were. And she's like, is that far enough? I said, yeah, it's far enough. And I got out because I decided to use it so bad. I couldn't hold it. And I started going and there was something loud, like coming from the north, coming towards us. And it was crashing through the brush and it was very large. And it scared the heck out of both of us. So we got up, I got in that truck and took off.
Yeah, that's like the same old story we have here from the Brushy Creek. I mean, I experienced something myself that I would consider probably my first, encounter, I guess, with something that I couldn't explain. But when I started telling that story and making my research public, people were coming to me with that same story, Josh, kind of like being chased out of the area. And I mean, you won't believe how many people I've got that story from, people that I've never told mine to, so it's something, man. I really can't explain it, but it's something that comes out aggressive, trying to get you to leave.
Do you think it's more, because I've gotten Bigfoot and Dogman reports in that area. What do you think is more prominent? I mean,
man, to be honest with you, I've had probably more people with sightings of what they would describe as a Bigfoot, to be honest with you. That's what I've heard. But, I mean, again, you have the Bear Man legend that's like right there. And also, if you want to really get into details about it, the Tonkawa tribe, there was a local tribe that made the Brushy Creek their home. They actually called the area Takachwe Puetsu, which means the land of the good water. And they were a really unique tribe. They had a full body tattoos all over, which is really, you don't really associate that with Native Americans. You might think maybe more of Islander or something like that.
Specific Islanders.
Exactly. But they had full body tattoos and they worshipped a wolf. They worshipped a giant wolf. And every season they would put on a giant wolf coat. And for several days they would dance around in this wolf coat. That's right on the Balcones. Right along the Brushy Creek right here. And that's a fact. You can't dispute it. In my documentary, I actually talked to the person who initiated the Tonkawa tribe as local legends of Round Rock, the city I live in. And he gave me all the details of what they were like, which there wasn't many details, which is kind of another strange thing. You don't really hear too much about them. All we know is they were in the area. They had really odd traditions. I believe they buried their dead feet first. Also, that's one of their traditions they would do. And and just a really strange tribe.
Genocided by the Comanches for the most part. I mean,
unfortunately, they decided to side with the settlers, the Anglo settlers, and they kind of got backstabbed, and they ended up getting sent up to Oklahoma, and where they reside now. So the Tonkawa tribe is actually now in Oklahoma.
Yeah, they were known as expert trackers, and they would use them. The Texas Rangers would use them to track the Comanches, and the Comanches didn't like that, so they were definitely, and anybody who wasn't a Comanche, with the exception in Texas, with the exception of the Kiowa. That was the only ally that the Comanches respected, and the only ones that they would trade with or deal with. The Karankawas and Tonkawas and every type of Apache, which is just a word that is a Comanche word. It means enemy. So they were considered Apache, and so anybody who was, that was the enemy. But the Tonkawas were a very interesting tribe, and one of the things you were talking about, how they revered the wolf. That was like there were three animals that the Kiowa revered, and the wolf was one of them. I believe the raven was another, and they had like their totems or whatever. And they didn't. The Comanches were so nomadic that they didn't have totems, and they really didn't have a lot of traditions as far as like spirituality. They believed in one god, like the great god of the sky, and that was it. There wasn't a whole lot else. And they were pretty warlike, and they drove a lot of the other tribes to extinction. I mean, we don't even know how many there could have been before, because there was so much going back and forth, so much genocide going between tribes. I tell you what's interesting, though, about the Bear Man thing. That's a legend that stretches all the way from up here where we're at, and you're probably about 10, 15 miles from me. So it stretches from here all the way down to San Antonio, those stories and those legends. And it does. And another thing, you were talking about the fault line, it moves up and down instead of like the San Andreas that moves side to side, which creates earthquakes. Ours is an up and down one. And you can see that on 360. You can see the different levels of rock when you go through there because they dynamited through it to create 360. And so that there's these giant like stone hills or mountains, whatever you want to call them, when you're driving through there. And it's really pretty. And in some areas, it's very beautiful. 22. It looks like Colorado until you roll your window down and it's 120 degrees outside. Then you know you're not in the mountains of Colorado.
But it's funny because I don't think people, when they think of Texas, they might think flat land. No, man, it's the hill country out here. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of, you got Mount Benel. It's not really a mountain or anything like that, but it's we got these rolling hills out here. Yeah, it's a beautiful area that you got to watch where you are, though. We don't have earthquakes, but we do get sinkholes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of this people don't realize the cave systems. Now if you think about it, you have Natural Bridge Caverns just north of San Antonio. I think near Schertz, I think is where it's at. Right? Is that where it's at?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have in Georgetown Interspace Caverns.
Yep.
And from what I was told by a friend of mine's brother, he actually is a geologist. He said that they are actually, because he collects rocks and stuff. I don't see him very often, but I talk to him every once in a while, and he said that it stretches. Those caves actually connect. He said there's a connection there all the way underneath us.
I've always been a thinker, a believer in that theory. To be honest with you, and you brought up. Was it the National Bridge Caverns?
The Natural Bridge Caverns, yeah.
Right. So that one, I believe I just read that, I think it was a couple months back, they did an expedition down there about 4 miles, something like that, 2 to 4 miles into the earth from this place. And they found saber-tooth bones in there. And they're wondering how the heck were saber-toothed tigers able to get this far out here? It's pitch black. It's miles deep. And they never, they still haven't found the end of the Natural Bridge Cavern. There's just so many offshoots of it and things like that. But it really makes you wonder, how did those freaking mountain lions or saber-toothed tigers get all the way back there in the pitch black? And there was multiple tigers back there.
Yeah, and
that was just a couple months back.
We went through there. I think it was December. No, it was December 2019, right, Anthony? Right before New Year's. Yeah. And we went through there with Anthony's brother. We took him, and he was probably just 17 or something at that time. And we took him out there and we went to San Antonio and did all the fun stuff. And then on the way back, we went to Natural Bridge Caverns, and then we did the safari, the wild animal safari thing.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Now, here's a weird thing. There was a guy who we talked to at the snack bar area, who said that he had been living out there for a long time. And he said, this whole area where we're standing, there's caves underneath this.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, I think he said he lived like 4 or 5 miles from there. And when he had the grandkids with him, he was an older guy. And I can't remember his name. I think his name was Brian or something like that. But he was telling me and Nelly and the guys some pretty cool stories. And I was wearing a Paranormal Roundtable hat. And he asked me what that was, because he liked my hat. And I said, oh, and he didn't even know. I don't think he really even knew what it was. I think he just thought the hat looked cool, whatever. And it was a camouflage. And I started talking to him and told him about my show, whatever. And he's like, man, my wife is real big into UFOs. She believes in aliens and all this stuff. He goes, I don't know what to believe. He goes, but I do believe in Bigfoot. And I said, really? And so he saw the Bigfoot on the logo. And so we started talking about it. And he said that years ago when he was young, and like I said, I think he lived a few miles west of there when he was young. And he said that now he lives further out, but when the grandkids come, he comes into town and he'll take them, whatever. And that's what he was doing. It was like the Christmas break or whatever. And he said that there was many stories when he was growing up of people seeing large predatory cats. I'm not talking about like a mountain lion or whatever. He was talking about like really big, like almost prehistoric looking cats. Now, he didn't say they were saber-toothed, and I did ask him that. And he said, no, nothing like that. But he goes, but these like kind of puma looking creatures that were just super oversized, not like a normal, like 300 or 400 pounds, which they don't get that big.
No.
Yeah, and he said that when he was a kid, I guess he said he was like a young teenager, him and his friends saw a Bigfoot creature crawl out of what he believes was a cave that was like down in the ground on his friend's property. And so there was an actual Sasquatch creature, or he called it a Sasquatch, that just popped its head and then looked around and just came right out. And he was like, dude. And then years later, he said he went over there with his friend's older brother, and they were looking down into that cave. And his brother, I remember him saying something about his brother, like tried to yell into it or something. And then they got a response.
That's creepy.
So they just took off running.
Yeah.
And his friend's grandfather, that was his land. And he said, don't go out there, leave that hole alone. And so his daughter was like, well, why don't you cover it up? And that would have been his friend's mother. And he was like, no, we don't do that. Because if you mess with them, they'll mess with you. And he said that always stuck with him.
That's creepy.
But he's a pretty good old guy. We talked for a little while. He was almost 80 years old, and I don't even know if he's still around. He looked like he was not in great health or whatever, but he was a very nice guy. And we were just tired. We were sitting in the little snack bar area, and I just started up a conversation with him because he said he liked my hat. And so, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how, many caves. I have a document from the Texas University of Texas Spelunker group, and they estimate in that document there's 300 to 3,000 undiscovered caves in Williamson County alone. That's just Williamson County.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, it's very believable, but it's just it blows your mind.
It is. And I mean, you hear about some of these caves in that document that are like Airman's Cave. I'm not sure if you've heard of Airman's Cave.
Explain to the audience what that is. That's very interesting.
So, I mean, that's a miles deep cave in closer to, I believe that one might be in Travis County, actually.
I think it is.
Yeah, but there's maybe at least no more than 5 people have ever reached the end of it, supposedly, and they claim to have reached the end of it. But I think there's a thread online of a group of kids who actually tried to get to the end of it, and they documented really well their journey in there. It took them 8 hours to get to what they thought was the end, but it just kept stretching on. And they said about 4 hours into the earth. It sounds weird to say, but that's how it is. 4 hours into the earth, they came upon almost like an art gallery in there of people who had came in, and like it's almost like a halfway point. There was statues in there and a lot of old utensils and stuff from early, maybe even the 30s, possibly. But as you pass that and you keep going another 4 or 5 miles, supposedly at the very end of this Airman's Cave, there are 2 gigantic crystals, 2 twin crystals at the end of this cave. There have never been any photographs of it, but multiple people have said to have seen it, and even the person who was there was taking pictures of all this stuff. The group of kids that went took pictures of most of the stuff, but they said they were so dead tired when they got to the end of it. The kid was basically like, all right, I'm going to use my energy to take pictures, or if I do that, I'm going to die in here. He said he had no energy left. So they pretty much just were there for like a minute, 2 minutes, and then turned back around and started their way out, which was another 4 hours. So they didn't see light for 8 hours, which is kind of insane when you're talking about exploring a cave. And I'm talking about there were some points where they had to be on their hands and knees crawling, kind of squeezing through. And yeah, that's going to take a lot out of you. If you're doing that for miles on end, I mean, that's going to wear you down. But that's the Airman's Cave there. There's supposedly 2 gigantic, and it's funny, you brought up mirrors too, right? You said something about the mirrors earlier. Supposedly there are 2 twin crystals there. I'm not sure what type of crystals, but I forget what the ones they have in Mexico, that cave, I think they're the same type.
Oh, there's a cave that's all crystal.
Yeah. They were that type of crystals. They said there was 2 gigantic twin crystals right there at the end of Airman's Cave. That's what they say. There's never been any photographs of it, but I think that's at least 4 or 5 people have described seeing that. And that's just one of the many gigantic caves in the area. Josh, I remember I think I was telling you about the breathing cave that we have here in Williamson County. And it got its name because you would be able to throw a 2x4 into this cave and it would shoot out. In the Spelunking group that actually wrote about this, said they did a research paper on it saying what they believe is that there's a chamber at the bottom underneath this breathing cave, and it forces pressure up into the smaller chamber, kind of like a gun. And that's what forces the 2x4 out. But when they did their calculations, they came up with a gigantic, like almost like a I don't want to say, a couple 100,000 square foot, like an arena down there, causing this pressure. And that's a huge space, if you think about it. But they thought their calculations were wrong, so they planned on going back there. But from what I understand, they never did. So that just kind of goes to show you that we're like Swiss cheese out here. It's like we're picking spots to put houses, and even those places are kind of touch and go at certain points.
Well, that's like people building out in that blackland out there in Taylor. I mean, your house, that land that's unstable. And if you build a house out there and you don't put some serious, like you got to put, what are they called when you?
It's like a certain type of dirt that you have to put down layer by layer and then compact it really good.
And there's these spikes they have to drill in like real deep, like 15 feet down. And otherwise your house is going to come apart. The foundation is going to crack.
Oh yeah.
And I don't understand why people do it. And you see these builders doing it and you're like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And back to what I was saying about the place where you used to work, Anthony, it was right there. It was closer to Georgetown than it was Leander, but it was on 29. And it was a subdivision that they were building. And I was out there with you one time and we heard the coyotes going crazy and they were fighting with something. And we heard, like, you used to work out there and so did Thomas and a couple other people. And I remember Thomas is a guard who he's passed away. He used to work for us, but he told me, man, one time he heard something that sounded like, and now, of course, he listened to my show a few times. Maybe it tempered his mind, but he said, dude, if there was a werewolf out there, he goes, I heard it. And he goes, and I thought that there were these coyotes fighting with something. And it sounded like something large and canine was killing them. And one of the people that was one of the builders that was working out there, he had said that when he went out into one of the pastures out there to unload some of the lumber, that they found 3 dead coyotes that had been ripped apart. And he said it looked like they were ripped apart. So Bigfoot, Dogman, I don't know. But like Thomas had told us that he thought that he heard howling and shrieking that sounded like something large and powerful. And then he heard the coyotes, you know what they sound like. But he said he had never heard that before. And there were several people who worked out there, including you, Anthony, who heard strange noises. And I just remember one time I went out there to drop you food off to you. And I was there with Nellie and she was like, oh my God, what is that? And I was like, and I told her, I don't know. And then when we were leaving, like, she's like worried about Anthony. And I told Anthony, I said, don't leave your windows down, man.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing out there is there's a lot of private ranches that are still, generations owned ranches that have never seen anyone else as a title holder. So no one other besides, small families have had access to this land. And you're talking about thousands of acres all around 29 there.
Yeah, that whole area is kind of freaky. And like I said before, I saw a guy run across, the road naked. Crazy. And I was just like, what the heck? And I was going to Georgetown to drop off some food for Scorpion, who was working there. And at that site, do you remember that site, Anthony? They were building their retirement home.
Yeah.
And Zane, my nephew, he had heard, now this is weird. He had gone to the Porta-John to use the bathroom. And while he was in there, he said that he told us this as years ago when he was working. I think he was a young guy when that happened, like 19, 20 or something. And he said that he heard breathing, like something really loud breathing right outside. And then he heard something like walking and he could hear, like he could feel it. He said he could almost feel the ground move when he was sitting there, and he heard the breathing, and then he heard kind of a growl. And then one time he was outside, he said he was walking around the building and he saw like a couple does just take off running real fast, and he heard crashing and trees snapped their limbs and stuff, but he didn't see what was chasing him. He goes, I didn't see anything. Well, now looking back on it, I was talking to him a few months ago and we were talking about the whole cloaking thing. And he said, dude, it may have been something like that, because he thought he saw like something blurry, but he couldn't make it out. And it was in the dark. It was dark. Doesn't help. And he couldn't see what it was that was chasing him, but he saw the doe. And then there was a guy that we became friends with, me and Anthony, who claimed that he saw some weird stuff on the camera, like something that looked kind of like what you would describe as like cloaking, because when we were talking to him, and you remember the little short guy that was the superintendent there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy, and well, to us, he was considered a hard ass by a lot of the workers, but he was friendly with us. And we were there one time, just shooting the breeze with him, and we felt bad because all he did was like travel around for that company and build stuff. So he was kind of like a traveler, nomadic guy, whatever. But he enjoyed his job, and so we took him some beef. Like every year we do this like kind of a food drive, and we always have steaks left over, and we'll give them to our clients. And so we took him some steak, and we hung out with him, and it was, I think, a couple days before Christmas or something.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there talking to us, and he was telling us, he goes, man, your nephew was telling me something about seeing like something chase some deer. He's like, well, I'm going to tell you, man. He goes, on those cameras, he said, I saw something that looked like it was like it moved by the camera really quickly, and it was kind of blurry. Well, a couple weeks later, when I went up there to talk to his boss, when the project was coming to an end, he showed me the cameras, and I to this day I don't know what that was. I cannot tell you what it was. I was standing there with my brother, and we were looking at the cameras, and it just looks like something laying down flat, Eric, and then it's like it stands up and then moves, but it's the way it moved was like it didn't look fast, but I know it was because he had to slow it way down. But it looks like it's just a fluid movement, but you can't tell what it is. It doesn't really have a shape. It doesn't have like four limbs. You can't tell, it's like almost like water moving. It's so weird.
That's creepy.
Yeah. And Scorpion, he used to work there, and he said that one night he was working there, or he said a couple times he heard something like tap on the glass, and he would look up and he would go out and look, and there would be nobody there. So needless to say, we had 3 or 4 guards that just didn't want to work there, Zane, Thomas, and another guy. And then we just ended up having Scorpion was the only one that would do it, wasn't it? Just him? It was like...
At their retirement home in Georgetown?
Yeah. I think he was the only one that ended up...
No, I mean, like, I worked it a lot too.
Well, I'm talking about like until all that weird stuff started happening.
Oh, yeah.
He was the only one that ended up staying and working it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you worked it, though, you were in your vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to work out there and not really be bothered by whatever it was out there. But pretty much everyone else was weirded out by one thing or another over there. So that's why I consider myself fortunate.
And then we had this one guard.
Either it left me alone or I was oblivious.
Well, you parked up front. You guys parked. Remember we had the one guard? I don't want to say his name, but we freaked him out so bad. Remember he started running?
Yeah.
He ran into the woods. We had a guy. He was from Afghanistan. He used to work for us. I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, his name was Hamid, but we freaked him out so bad because when we pulled up, we didn't see him. So we got out of the truck and we started walking around looking for him. And he was like, when he started yelling, asking us who was there, we just decided to mess with him. We knew he wasn't armed. He was unarmed, and he was outside of his vehicle. But I guess he had locked his keys in his vehicle, so he took off running.
Oh,
and so then when we talked to him, he was so scared. And then he goes, I can't work here, my friend. I'm sorry, I can't work here. He said, there are jinn here. He kept telling us that there was jinn there. And so we were just like, okay, fine. And so then that's when we put, I think after that, we put Zane over there.
Yeah.
And then Zane didn't like it because he had some weird stuff happen. And then it went on and on. And Scorpion ended up working it. The rest of the time he was there, and he got along real good with superintendent. But he did say that there was weird stuff happening. Like he would hear something tapping on the glass. Speaking of 2x4s, he found 2x4s that were snapped in half. Really weird. It looked like somebody, like a person, like a super strong person had snapped them in half and thrown them everywhere. And so the superintendent was like, showed us, like he showed him, and I saw the pictures, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. All I know is that whole area is just really weird. There's a lot of weirdness there.
No, I mean, when you said snapped in half, it kind of reminded me about here in my area, the Brushy Creek, actually right across from Harryman Road, we have the Sandbass Cemetery. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sandbass Cemetery. And that has its own loads of, haunted stuff going on there. But actually I believe it was 2011, that's actually the same year I had my encounter. The cemetery was pretty much destroyed. And when you go look at it, you don't see any type of chisel marks or hammer marks, like someone beating it down with a hammer. You just see stuff that looks like it was snapped in half, beaten in. It's in the documentary. And I'm out there filming, and I have with me a writer from the area who wrote for the local paper. And he talked about it was in 2011, right after people had, this is what he said, had described seeing something like a white Bigfoot in the area. That was in 2011. And if you look at it, there's like crypts that are solid stone. They were just bashed in. And again, there's no type of utensils or chisel marks or anything like that. It literally just looks like someone just beat it in with their bare hands, and even tombstones that were just snapped in half. And the power of something would need to do that would just be insane. I mean, I can't imagine what on earth would do that. And that's just right across the street from Harryman Road, right on the corner where the Harryman Road is.
I want to ask you about Harryman Road, but before we get into that, let me explain to the audience who Sam Bass was. He was an outlaw who was gunned down. Was he trained? He robbed a train, didn't he?
He robbed a few trains. Yeah, he had just robbed the Denton Railroad.
That's what it was. Yeah,
and he was planning on coming into Round Rock to supposedly steal or rob a bank here in Round Rock. And there's a really odd story about what all happened in that during his crew and everything like that. But he came into a general store. He was actually famous for the cross draw, like the X draw, pulling two guns out at the same time. He made that famous. And so he was in the general store, and A.W. Grimes, who was the sheriff at the time, walked in and saw that he had two pistols on him, and supposedly told him, hey, it's illegal to have pistols on in the city or whatever. And he drew down on him right there, and he killed A.W. Grimes in the general store. And as he was leaving, people just started taking pop shots at him, and they did shoot him, but he was able to ride in the west in the direction of Old Town, which is right next to Harryman Road and where Sam Bass Cemetery is now. And supposedly he had one of his hideouts there where he was hiding his loot from the Denton Railroad. And I believe if you value it now, the gold, I think it would be, I don't remember exactly. I want to say like over 600,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and there's people that still look for it too.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a whole group that still hunt for that treasure out here. Supposedly it's west out there, and he was trying to make his way back to that area, but he ended up dying underneath an oak tree there. And there was no way he would have been able to spend that money in the time he arrived from Denton. So that gold is, who knows where that gold is, And
there's been floods and all kinds of things too.
Absolutely, yeah. There's been a lot of construction too, so maybe some lucky construction worker found it or something like that. But another weird thing about the Sam Bass thing is that one of his gang was actually in on it, supposedly. He was an informant, and he was telling the local authorities that were in Round Rock, hey, this guy's coming in here. He's planning on robbing the bank. I don't remember his name exactly, but he was working with the authorities. And after Sam Bass had been killed, it was everybody's thought that this guy was going to go and get the treasure, where I'm sure he must have known where it was. He was part of the gang and everything like that. It turns out, I believe it was like a couple of weeks later, he hung himself in his jail. So they called him kind of like the Outlaw Judas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like now, if you go to Round Rock, and Round Rock's a very interesting city. I spent a lot of time there. But Round Rock, if you go there, everything is Old Town, old settlers. And then Sam Bass Road, there's Sam Bass Road where supposedly is out there is where he died. And then there's A.W. Grimes, which is named after the sheriff that he killed that started the whole thing. And it's a very interesting, it's very interesting. And then it's called Round Rock because there's a giant round rock that's in the middle of a creek, and so, yeah, it's a very interesting place. It's a very cool, historic town. If you've
ever seen Lonesome Dove, like the Chisholm Trail, that's where they were running cattle. They were running cattle from here all the way up to Montana. That's the Chisholm Trail. It runs right through Round Rock.
And there's a lot of stores that are called Chisholm this and Chisholm that. My hometown of Taylor, there again, there's another one. They have those Chisholms, and when I was a kid, I asked my dad, I said, what is that? And he said, well, that's the Chisholm Trail. And he explained it to me and how, our towns were all located on it, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. There's a lot of history here. And what's really weird when you look at, man, I get some weird stories like outside of Taylor, and this is still in Williamson County too. Yeah. The Hawky Bridge, and then there was the plantation ghost that he's, and there are two really, really odd. 2 headless ghosts within, that's how many, maybe 3 miles of each other, Anthony?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy because one of them was a plantation home that was burned down by the Yanks after the war. And they did some horrible thing. The federal troops actually killed. There were some slaves that were actually, they were like the house slaves that they tried to defend the woman of the house from the Yanks. And that's the story. And so they killed them. And they pretty much just hung everybody. And so they beheaded I think he was a captain or something. He was a cavalryman. He was a captain from the South, and they killed him. And supposedly he still rides around. And we actually spoke to a person who claims that they were driving in their minivan with their wife and kids, and this guy saw this thing ride up like this specter. And it's right out there by Hawky Bridge. And then the story of Hawky Bridge is that a guy, it was back in the 20s, I believe. We saw the plaque. I think it's from the 1920s. I talked about it on the show. And this guy was defiant. They told him, build this bridge. And he said, no. And so they said, okay. So they made an example of him. They shot him, and then they hung him by his feet. So then the story is, if you would go to Hawky Bridge, there's no record, there's no story of him like supposedly like actually being beheaded, but people see a headless ghost. But that they say that's a myth. But people claim that they see a convict dressed in pinstripes, Williamson County, whatever, and that sometimes the Lover's Lane right there, they'll go and park, and that the blood would drip down, and they would hear it dripping on their vehicle. And then one of my dad's friends, he told me when I was young, a teenager, he said that I looked up and I saw hanging upside down a convict from Hawky Bridge. And he said that him and his girlfriend, and this gives me the chills, and his other friend that was with him, these are all my dad's friends, that it like turned its head and looked up at him. And they were like, they all just freaked and ran in different directions. And then when they ran into each other, they turned and they looked and there was nothing there, but they all swore that they saw that. And so, I don't know. It's just Williamson County, very weird place, very, very haunted.
Well, yeah, I mean, you haven't even mentioned like Jacob's Bridge. That's another bridge that's right there.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, or Jake's Hill in Hutto. I mean, that's another one, Jake's Hill.
You know, and really, we don't have a solid story of how it got its name or its paranormal essence. There are multiple stories of a bus flipping there, killing a bunch of students, to a group of kids on their way to like a concert and crashing there. We don't really know, but what we do know is that a lot of paranormal happenings occurred there, and people have even, I believe there was a news, it had to be like in 2012, a news organization went out there just to kind of test the theory. They were getting all types of weird stuff happening to them. They were hearing stuff. This is on camera. They were recording it. They were hearing all types of stuff, supposed orbs as well flying out there. I'm not saying it's out there or not, but they were filming out there and they were just creeped out. They left. But Jacob's Hill, Jacob's Bridge. I actually have some part of the documentary where we're there next to Jacob's Bridge, and there's a lot of satanic symbols underneath that bridge that people have written. Not only in that bridge, but there's another bridge not far from there that's kind of like a hidden bridge also. And there's all types of weird witchcraft type symbols that are in the documentary. And if you look at it, it's people put some time and effort into this, because they'll be out there one weekend and then they'll be covered in paint the next weekend, and they'll be back out there, shortly after that. So if you look at it closely, there's a bunch of just layers of paint on there from all the times it's been painted over and then just replastered on there. But it's a weird spot, man. It just gives you the chills being out there. Especially at night and you're alone.
Tell the listeners exactly where that's, and not exactly, but give them kind of, because I don't want people going somewhere and.
Yeah, it's there in Hutto. I'm not sure if you guys know exactly where Hutto is, but it's in between Round Rock and Taylor. And I mean, you could literally, if you drive, you're not paying attention, you could miss it driving through there.
It's gotten bigger now, though.
It's gotten a lot bigger now, but it's on one of those country roads. I want to say it's like 312, maybe something like that. But if you just follow that out there, you'll come along to Jacob's Bridge. It's a small bridge there in the middle of the country. Now there's actually a little bit more urbanization out there, but it's still kind of covered in brush, that area. And then if you keep going along that direction, you keep going straight, you're going to end up at another bridge. I don't know what that one's called, but that one is the one where we were getting most of the characters and drawings there. And that one's the one we primarily feature in the documentary. We do have some of Jacob's Bridge in there too.
You know, a couple of my witnesses that I talk about in my book, on the Dogman book, saw what they saw in between Taylor and Hutto. And we actually, with one of the guys' name is Phil, and you know, we went out to the spot where we're pretty sure we pinpointed exactly where he saw it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty interesting. Like, you could see like how this thing was sitting in the ditch, and there was a creek right there. And there's all these farms and stuff out there. And my Uncle Butch has a farm out there. And he asked me one day, he said, Wolf, you don't think that any of these creatures are out here, do you? I said, nah, they're not out. But I totally liked this. I didn't want to freak him out and have him thinking about it, because he's got enough problems with the hogs and the coyotes. And he goes, yeah, it ain't nothing out here like that, right? I said, nah, it's on the other side over by Copeland. He goes, oh, okay. He's like, I don't want to be worried about that stuff at night. But yeah, it's literally like down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, you're bringing up like that weird area in between. And in my next documentary project, Expedition Brushy Creek, I'm actually in right there in between that area, which there's like a little runoff creek where in the piece of Brushy Creek, I filmed some really weird symbols. It's like a 12-foot long symbol type thing. You have to see it. And it looks like it's written in a computer or binary code. Really strange, really weird. And I had someone translate it, and I don't know if I want to say what it said, but in that area, I was there with my friend David, who's half Comanche, and we were there exploring, just looking out some stuff. We were actually picking up a trail camera that we'd set out there, and we heard something, and we didn't see what it was, but we found a tiny footprint in an area we had just passed by that wasn't there first. Really small mud footprint, and this was in February, right before the freeze happened. So you're like, who would let their kid walk around barefoot out here in freezing weather? It makes no sense.
Do you think it was like a duende?
I have no idea, man. But that area, there's an area in between Hutto and Taylor full of boulders. I've never seen boulders like that in the Brushy Creek area. But this one has gigantic boulders. They're in the Harryman Road documentary. But yeah, I've never seen boulders that size on the Brushy Creek, only in this one area. It's kind of like a side runoff of the Brushy Creek. But yeah, that's kind of like no man's land right there between Taylor and Hutto right there. It's strange. And well, I don't know how far you want to get into it, but in 2021, they actually found a man's body out there. I think that's more on the Taylor side in a pasture. And to this day, we have no idea who that person was, his race, age, how they found him, what state of decomposition he was in. We have no information on that. The only thing that I can say, and I'll share with you guys, is that when I first heard about that, I was at a car show the day after it had happened in the weekend, and I saw a cop there, and I went up to him and asked him, "Hey, what's the deal with this body Williamson County found out there?" And he's like, "Man, you're like the third person to ask me that." And he's like, "Let's go talk to my sergeant or captain." I don't remember what he said. So we're walking up to his sergeant or higher authority, and he starts saying, "Hey, what's the deal with that body they found over there off of whatever?" And I was a couple of steps behind, but I heard him reply saying, "Oh, you mean that murder?" He said that. I heard him say that.
And this happened when?
This was in 2021. Give me 1 second. I actually have the dates here. That was 2021. Oh my gosh, where is it?
And there was a guy that was murdered, and they didn't release. I didn't even know about this.
November 9th, 2021. Wow. We have no idea who that person was, race, age, nothing like that. And like I told you, the captain said, "Oh, that murder." Okay. And then he saw me walk up, and then I was like, "Yeah, what's the deal with that?" And he goes, "Well, another state's involved with that." I was like, "What?"
Another state?
Another state's involved with that.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have no idea still to this day who that person was. That was 2021. So it's been a while, man.
God, that's so weird. That's so weird. Like, and there's so much weird stuff that out here in this area, dude. Like, you could do documentaries for years on this stuff.
Josh, that's part of a 10-person body count that's been found in the area. If you want to go into detail, in my documentary, I bring it up, which was really the main focus of me actually investigating into this, is because in 2016, Round Rock was named one of the safest cities in America, top 10 safest cities in America. That same year, they found 3 bodies in the Brushy Creek. That same year.
Spoke too soon.
Yeah.
And there you have it, folks. And that's all the time we're going to have for this week's episode with Eric Palacio, This will be a 3-part episode, so we're going to come back next Tuesday with our regular podcast episode, and then next Thursday we're going to drop the second part of this discussion, and same thing with the Tuesday and the Thursday after that. Go show Eric some love on his YouTube channel. It's called Media Palace, where you can find both of his documentaries, The Beast of Brushy Creek and The Legend of Harryman Road. He's done a lot of great work right here in Central Texas. He's got a lot of information, and him and Wolf really do some deep dives into some really cool stuff. Like, subscribe, comment, and have a good night.